very far over. I think you need to move on.
Is it well?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, hey, Molly and Kerry, as usual. Tracy's getting us to do every sort of month now. We're going to be talking today about subcontractors. Whether you are a subcontractor, lots of people like to call it all sorts of different things. Some people, subcontractors, freelancers, associates, consultants, anything like that. They're all basically the same thing, really. You might be able to hear the builders outside.
It's so loud.
So yeah, I think, do you want to say there's a lot of people changing the way they work now. They're moving almost away from being subcontractors and freelancers because of this IR35 changes. There is a definite difference between being subcontracted and being employed, and IR35 is seeking to sort of crack down on that, make sure people are paying the right amount of taxes, that sort of thing. Do you want to talk about the other bits?
Yeah, there was a bit of a misunderstanding about IR35 in the sense that there was a massive panic and with the view that it was kind of almost like they thought it was coming in. It's been in since 2000, but it's just kind of changed the way that who needs to determine what the status is. So if you are a subcontractor and you are subcontracting to smaller businesses, then technically the IR35 status is still relying on the subcontractor to determine the status. If you're working for a bigger company, then that's when the company is the one that is liable for determining what the status is. So there's a bit of a misunderstanding around that. But what we aim to achieve is, regardless of the situation, regardless of whether you are working alongside or for a bigger company or you're, a smaller company, it's always important to make sure that your contracts are protecting you the best that they can. Now, it's not an absolute. However, having a contract in place that lays out exactly why you are a contractor and not employed is your first defence, as it were.
Yeah, there's loads of different areas that it's almost like a tick box exercise where you can have a table and it's like a pros and cons list, a subcontract versus an employed list. And depending on how many sort of ticks on each column you get, depends on basically how you will be determined by HMRC, really. And so yeah, as we say, we can write a contract however we want, but that list will kind of determine, and any kind of investigator will go through all of those bits.
Yeah, you might have a contract and it might say all the right things. It might say, we don't attend weekly meetings, we don't do this, we're not told what to do and when to do it. But you need to make sure that the actual processes reflect what's written in the contract, because otherwise, your contract is effectively just pointless and it's not doing what it needs to do.
Yeah, it's there's loads of different facets to it, but it's a lot along the lines of, are you doing regular work for them? Have you got set hours? Do you choose how and when and in what order you do the work? Do you have many different clients, or is this your only client? And you're essentially going in every single day as though you would if you're employed. Could you even send a substitute? If you're employed, if you have a normal sort of 9 to 5 job, and you can get there one day, but you want it to still be paid, if you send your mum or your friend or someone who did something similar along, that would be considered really strange. But as a subcontractor, you sending a different roofer, a different builder, a different whatever along is completely normal.
And it's encouraged. You're allowed to be able to do it. You're allowed to substitute your services.
Yeah, and then obviously things like getting paid holiday pay, sick pay, taxes, that sort of thing. And if you do fall foul of the regulations, those taxes, holiday pay, sick pay, that sort of thing, are the fines that you get imposed and are sort of chargeable to you then, if that's determined to be wrong, essentially. Another thing that's kind of come up lately is COVID and getting materials, changing prices. A lot of people have kind of planned for things and they've quoted for jobs, done sort of things like that, and then they can't actually get hold of the materials. I think there's a chip shortage. I think there's just general
Chips.
not chips, like
Fish and
computer
chips.
computer chips, building materials, that sort of thing. They're really hard to get hold of at the moment, so the prices are skyrocketing. If you'd kind of agreed to do a job for £5 grand, £10 grand, whatever it was, and those things changes, you need to see how you can change your price, whether you are the subcontractor or whether you're the person employing that subcontractor. You need to be able to know whether you can change your price or whether you are kind of fixed into that. That was something that came up yesterday actually. We just had a call about that.
We had that email as well as a consumer, wasn't it, that said they had a quote and now that quote has been changed. Where does it stand? There's not a lot you can do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well,
the price of materials have increased.
Yeah, there are sort of clauses in certain contracts. If you've kind of started the works and you've got halfway through
If you started the works, it's very different.
Yeah, it's kind of a bit difficult. We can put certain clauses in that if you're the ones doing the work, you are able to change those prices. Whereas if you're the person employing someone to do those work, you're not actually going to want to have those prices changed, and suddenly your job that you'd agreed to pay someone to do costs twice as much. So it's kind of both sides of the coin. Do you want to talk about your bona fide versus labour only kind of guy?
Yeah, I can't remember.
Okay, maybe not. So subcontractors, bona fide subcontractors and labour only contractors are, it's quite an insurancy term actually, but it has come up recently where someone had broken some materials on site and they were a subcontractor, and they essentially, the subcontractor obviously didn't want to be liable for that and didn't want to pay for that, but we'd written them a contract.
Yeah, but it's also different in construction because you have the CIS payments as well, which, because so many in the building industry, they seem just to be a rule to their own, and they're never employed, are they?
Mm-hmm.
It's always subbies, and hence why the CIS. When did CIS come in?
Years ago, I think it was the 90s. Yeah, that's another tax that you pay if you're working in the construction industry. Construction industry scheme it stands for, and yeah, it's basically making sure you're paying extra taxes, that sort of thing. Another thing that came up actually just yesterday as well is stealing clients. Have you thought about non-competition, non-solicitation clauses in those contracts? If you're a freelancer, have you got those and you don't necessarily want them in there? It could be restricting your ability to work, restricting your ability to set up your own business and work as your own business. But equally, on the other side of things, if you're the person employing it, you want to make sure that no one is going to run off and steal all your clients directly. If you're a big sort of major company, you've set up on your own and you're VAT registered because you're above the threshold. Many of the subcontractors, they're one-man bands, they go off on their own. They can essentially just undercut you by 20% straight away. So yeah, it's important to kind of make sure non-solicitation clauses are in there, but maybe not necessarily non-competition clauses.
And that should also be in your terms and conditions as well. So you're not only bounding your subbie, you're also binding your clients to make sure that anyone that you put in to your clients, they can't directly engage with them.
Yeah, with that kind of clauses as well, you're going to make sure those clauses are reasonable, making sure that it's limited as much as humanly possible in order to purely protect your rights and your legitimate business interests. So can you limit it to a certain mile radius? Can you limit it to a certain industry? But for a certain time period, so maybe 6 months or 12 months or even less. Limit it as much as possible, and it's most likely to stand up in court. Anything else you've kind of thought of?
Really? I haven't got any questions either.
No, I can see Tracy's joined us from the other office. I don't think I can see anyone else at the moment. It won't let me see them. So yeah, I think that's pretty much all we've got on subcontractors. If you have any other questions or anything, obviously get in touch, give us a call, go on the website. And also we've got a monthly newsletter that comes out now called The Write-Up, and it gives you all your legal updates and our recent blogs, and we kind of send that out and make sure that you're up to scratch with things. So make sure you signed up to that.
Tracy should go live too. Yeah, I think.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay.
Bye.
Bye.